Good afternoon, sisters. I'm so honored to be speaking with all of you today. A special recognition and congratulations to Lisette, Naldi, Angelica, Paula, and Alexa. I believe storytelling is a lost art, and so I wanted to share something more personal in the hope that it resonates with you. It is the story of my grandfather and how he thought his destiny was all mapped out. My mom told me that her father had an interesting life filled with synchronicities, a term coined by the analyst Carl Jung. Synchronicities are concurrent events that at first appear to be coincidental, but later turn out to be causally related. They are in fact incoincident. I think this was my mom's way of telling us that the universe was looking out for her father and that things that appeared to be coincidences were in fact evidence of the spirit looking after him. For example, my grandfather was very poor and had no money to afford higher education that he longed for. He had already graduated with a degree in civil engineering from one of the best engineering schools in Colombia, La Escuela de Minas de Medellín, and was having a hard time finding a job. Around that time, petroleum was first discovered in Colombia, and he heard about a contest in Bogota to earn scholarship at the Colorado School of Mines in the United States. He decided to enter the contest since there was no petroleum or mining engineers in Colombia. Somehow he scraped together the money he needed to go to Bogota, including borrowing from friends so he could enter the contest. When he got to the location for submitting applications, however, there was a sign on the door saying the deadline for submitting the applications had closed the day before. On a whim and a prayer, he slipped the application under the door anyway, despite the sign, and returned to Medellin. His heart was broken, especially after all the sacrifices he had made to get there. He soon learned that another student had won the scholarship. Sometime later, he received news that the person who had come in first place had chosen not to accept the scholarship, and that his submission was the second runner-up. The scholarship was his. He joyfully accepted this opportunity. This is how Jaime Botero, my grandfather, became one of the first petroleum engineers of Colombia. The occurrence changed the course of my grandfather's life and the course of the lives of his children, which included my mom and her siblings. The synchronicities continued. When he returned to Colombia, my grandfather wanted to work in his chosen specialty as a petroleum engineer, but the only jobs available were in civil engineering. For several years, he worked as a civil engineer in the construction of the roads in the jungle. On an initial trip to the Amazon, he and his crew boarded a boat and proceeded to journey through the Amazon River. During a great storm, the boat capsized and all the gear was lost, and sadly, everyone on board drowned except my grandfather. He woke up in the middle of the tree branches, looking at a group of a native tribe staring at him. They rescued and nursed my grandfather back to health. He was lost for several months and reported as dead. In fact, he was alive and exploring new territory. He contracted malaria, but was found and lived to tell the tale. Returning to the Amazon, he was hiking through the jungle. He heard a man speaking in English. The voice sounded familiar. He could not believe his ears. In the middle of the jungle, his path crossed with that of his former professor from the Colorado School of Mines, Professor Philip Shannon. My grandfather told him he would visit him in the group after they had made camp. Later, his professor asked him what he was doing with his engineering degree. My grandfather lamented that he was not working in his chosen field of study, petroleum engineering. He soon learned that his former professor was now responsible for operations at the tropical oil company in Barranca Bermeja in Colombia. Philip Shannon extended an opportunity to my grandfather to join the company. The last synchronicity of which I am aware is the most chilling. One day, my grandfather was returning home from a business trip and was in the airport waiting for his flight. My grandmother and his children were expecting him. While waiting, a distraught man asked my grandfather if he would mind selling his ticket as his wife was gravely ill and he needed to get home as soon as possible. The poor man had asked everyone on the flight, but only my grandfather had been willing to give up his seat so that the man could get home to see his wife. In a strange twist of fate, the plane crashed, killing everyone on board. My grandfather called my grandmother. She was relieved to learn that he had not taken the ill-fated flight. This seemingly random act of charity and compassion for a devoted husband distraught over his wife's illness saved my grandfather's life and allowing him to return home to see his wife and children. My reason for sharing this story is to let you all know that sometimes we think our lives are just random occurrences, but just maybe they were meant to be. You are here today maybe by persuasion from a school counselor, a parent, a friend, an uncle, or an aunt. Maybe challenged by someone else. Whatever the reason, you have been chosen. You play a critical role now that you have graduated, imparting your passion about your area of study, your expertise, your own life, and your own experiences that you will share with many folks. And just as critical, how these skills will be transferable now that you have graduated. Most importantly, you will do this with the resilient spirit you have cultivated this past few years at Rutgers. You have each proven your capabilities to juggle your own rigorous coursework, jobs, and responsibilities at the sorority. Your being here is not a random occurrence. Whatever your challenges this year, congratulations, and know that you're exactly where you're meant to be.